everyone. Welcome to today's episode of Kwentong Bayani, where we dive deep into topics that shape our society. I am Christian Daniel G. Fabria.
And I'm Alexandra L. Benetis. Today, we'll be discussing a subject that affects every one of us: crime, criminal law, and the concept of justice. Whether we're aware of it or not, these are principles that govern our daily lives.
Absolutely. Our objectives today are clear: to define crime, criminal law, and justice truly mean, to explore the causes of crime, and to understand how justice works as a cornerstone of our legal system.
But that's not all. We'll also be discussing how these concepts tie into ethical duties and how these make the lives of others better. Are you ready to join us?
And yes, for this episode, we're honored to have with us our criminology program head who has been in the profession of developing law enforcers and an expert of his field, Sir Harry Achas. Welcome to the show, sir. How are you, sir?
I'm fine, thank you, Christian, and thank you, Alex, and to all the FENMA community, especially our criminology students nationwide. I am so thrilled to connect with you, share insights, and have a meaningful conversation.
I'll be the first to ask questions, Sir Harry. Starting with the basics, could you help us understand what we mean when we talk about crime? Moreover, what causes crime, sir? And is it true that poverty, lack of education, and societal pressure contribute to criminal behavior?
Generally speaking, crime is an act or omission punishable by criminal law. So, under the definition, crime is being provided with a clear meaning, its nature is being specified, and the penalties or sanctions are being provided within the legal system. Essentially, crime is deemed wrongful under the law, which means that all of these actions are being identified. Such, for instance, the crime of theft. It's an act, of taking one's property without the consent of the owner. And it's being defined or given the definition under the law because it violates the rights of other people. On the contrary, naman, acts that are not defined within the criminal law will remain to be legal despite or regardless of its perceived morality. So, for example, may 10 kang syota, and for Alex, it is actually considered immoral, but since there is no law punishing such act, it will remain to be legal. Ultimately, it simply means that there is no crime if there is no criminal law punishing it. And in fact, it is also being mentioned in our study of criminology, the philosophical statement of logomacy, that there will be no crime if we have no criminal law, and that we can eliminate crime merely by abolishing the criminal law. And to the follow-up question, whether this poverty, social pressures, and lack of education can contribute to criminality, at certain point in the criminal definition or in the crime definition within the perspective of criminology, it is a yes. It's being mentioned as one of the triggering factors. However, criminology settled in a very vast perspective in explaining crime. So we have to begin with the so-called the classical concept that assume human free will as a basis of criminal liability. And from that point, we evolved into a more valid and utilizing scientific approach in the positivism, which is having a combined segments. One of those is the biological, another one is psychological, and then, of course, the sociological. Biological perspective maintains that crime is actually linked to genetic factors, or shall we say, it's heredity or inheritance that cause criminal behavior. On the other hand, you have also the psychological perspective, which suggests that crime is a product of defective or abnormal behavior. And this particular perspective, we can associate rape and passionate criminals or passionate crimes. And lastly, of course, the ones that you mentioned, the poverty, education, and also the social pressures or the societal pressure, is being captured in the sociological factors that highlight social pressures, particularly poverty, that leads to strain and eventually push people to commit crime. But as I said, in the criminology perspective, we don't settle to only one perspective in explaining crime. So we tend to explain crime based on the multiple perspective, based on a vast or in a range of perspective, which offers a deeper understanding rather than focusing or associating crime in a particular class, because there is a stigma when you talk about poverty, diba? And I do not want it to be perceived by other people that if you are poor, you have the higher probability to become a criminal. And that's our obligation as a criminology practitioner, to educate people and liberate everyone from ignorance about it.
Thank you for that, sir. Indeed, crime occurs when individuals break the rules set by the society. And of course, it is influenced by a number of factors. Now, how about the criminal law, sir? Can you help us understand this further?
Criminal law refers to the branch of law that defines crime, traits of their nature, and provides for their punishment. It's called as branch because the law broadly includes all rules of conduct made obligatory by legitimate authority for of course, the benefits and welfare of all people. And specifically, criminal law is the segment of the rule or the law that deals with crime. As to the context of its definition, defining crime means identifying actions or inactions that are violations of the rule or the law. At the same time, it sets boundaries to identify acceptable behavior. On the other hand, the traits of its nature includes examining the motives, the characteristics, as well as the elements to help understand why a certain act or inaction is threatening or violative to the moral fibers, to the moral society, and of course to the criminal law that we have. And lastly, to the provision of sanction, the provision of punishment is being provided in order to provide a means of social control. Without punishment, without sanction, there is no means for a criminal law to compel people obedience and adherence. So I think that's the simplest explanation of the criminal law.
Indeed, each crime type has specific legal definition, but the nature of any crime involves the understanding of the harm caused and intentions behind it. Going to our third important concept for today, sir, which is justice. What are we really aiming for when we talk about this? Is it the punishment, rehabilitation, or something more?
I think justice goes beyond punishment and rehabilitation. It's about achieving fairness and restoring the balance between the society, the suspect, the accused, and the PDL. While punishment holds people to be accountable for their action, rehabilitation aims to reintegrate them back as a contributing member of the community. And justice seeks to ensure that both needs of the victims and society are being addressed and met. Ultimately, justice aims to uphold individual rights, maintain public order, and develop a sense of equality and peace. I think that's the very essence of justice.
Precisely. Justice goes beyond punishment or rehabilitation. It seeks to create a balanced, fair, and humane society where people are treated with dignity, rights are protected, and of course, the societal harmony is prioritized. Now let's talk about the ethical aspect. In your opinion, sir, how does having strong ethical foundation help individuals, especially those in law enforcement, in dealing with crime and justice?
Having a strong ethical foundation is very crucial to individuals, especially to law enforcers, because it guides them in making their decisions, actions, and interactions in the profound ways. Ethics serves as a moral compass that helps them discern what is right from wrong, even in a more complex and high-pressured situation. Moreover, a strong ethical foundation guards police officers from corruption and abuse of authorities, thereby maintaining their credibilities. And ultimately, ethics ensures that justice is delivered fairly, humanely, and with the alignment of societal values. I think that's the essence of ethics for a member of the law enforcement organization.
In relation to that, what are some of the biggest challenges facing criminal justice systems today?
I think the biggest challenges faced by our criminal justice system today includes the following. First, the prison overcrowding, which I think is the most common problem encountered and being observed, as we all know that we have a very limited facilities for our PDLs, and the condition they have experienced inside is not really humane or not even met the requirement for the international standards. Secondly, you have the inequality. So I think it remains to be the battle cry of the wicked, the poor, and those people who have been identified as inferior because they did not feel that they were given access and access to information, access to the legal representation, and also the equality in terms of treatment since they have experienced biases and partisanship. Third, I think the issue between rehabilitation and punishment is still there, as people do not embrace yet the essence of rehabilitation as a means of modern crime prevention. Punishment is still the thing that is set to their minds, and they wanted that the criminals will will experience hardships inside the prison facilities. But again, di ba, the rehabilitation should be the ultimate goal, the ultimate outcome, because we all know that treatment and rehabilitation of criminals are considered or is considered to be the most effective way of preventing crime in the modern concept of crime prevention. And of course, you have the mental health and substance abuse, which I believe not all our facilities have the capability to address and cater problems like mental illness inside the prison facilities, because these services are oftentimes provided only by independent rehabilitation facilities. Lastly, the cybercrime and technology problem. We need to upgrade ourselves, equip our law enforcement officers, and develop a strong defenses against cybercrime, because this is a type of crime that is very complex to deal with. It's very difficult to prevent crime in the cyberspace. So if our law enforcement officers have actual experience problems in dealing with crimes in the physical space, so I think it's more difficult for them to deal with that in the cyberspace. So we have to equip ourselves, we have to train our police officers to deal with this type of crime in order for us, of course, to address some fear towards the cyber criminals and protect our people from further cyber criminal attacks. And all of these challenges highlight, of course, the need to reform resource allocation and innovative approaches to ensure that justice remains fair, effective, and adaptable.
Looking ahead, what are some potential future direction for criminal justice reform?
Based on the identified problems that I have enumerated earlier, some potential opportunities for our criminal justice system to do some reforms is basically to maximize the restorative justice, providing a mechanism or a machinery that settle disputes outside courts, which foster mediation and somehow facilitate in the healing process with the maximum involvement of the victims, the suspect, and of course the community, who will which or somehow have that greater role of facilitating and providing the so-called community-based rehabilitation. Secondly, of course, to focus rehabilitation or re-entry. we cannot really guarantee and measure the improvement and the development of criminal behavior while he is inside the correctional facility. It can be ultimately tested and be viewed if the time he will be reintegrated back to the community, he has chosen to stay as a law-abiding citizen and was not engaged to any immoral or criminal activities. So I think we have to maximize, we have to optimize rehabilitation and reintegration so that we will be able to see if these people have been reformed really through the treatment process inside the facility, at the same time the community-based correction that is being provided by the community. And of course, addressing systemic biases, as I mentioned earlier, that some members of the community, especially those who belong to the lower class society, experience biases, partisanship, and shall we say, deprived of their access to representation and other privileges. So I think we have to develop a mechanism that would reduce, not actually to totally eliminate, but to reduce biases within the community, especially in the justice process. And of course, we have to strengthen our community policing. So community policing requires the participation of the community, collaboration between the community and the law enforcement to strengthen the public safety defenses, the public safety approaches, and have a more safe community. But how can we possibly do that if the community will not cooperate and participate? Going back to what I have mentioned earlier about ethics. So ethics could be the ethical grounding, the ethical foundation that every police officer will embrace could play a very significant role in winning the trust and confidence of the community. If the community sees that police is very much fair, just, and respectful, I think it's easy for them to cooperate, and it's easy for them also to render their cooperation and participation, and thereby achieving the ultimate objective of fostering harmonious relationship with the community. And lastly, in the issue of cybercriminology, the cybercrime, and of course the technology preparedness, we have to enhance our training, upskill, and of course develop mechanisms and programs that will foster the enhancement of the skill among our law enforcement officers so that they will have a strong capability to deal with cybercrimes and other challenges brought by this technology. Ultimately, also, we have to explore on the alternative sentencing. I guess this is the only, or this is one of the means to reduce the overcrowding population inside the prison facilities. And this is also considered to be one of the most effective means of rehabilitation because the treatment and the supervision is being placed under the custody of the community.
As we wrap up, what final thoughts would you like to leave to our future criminologists about how understanding crime, criminal law, and justice can help them make the lives of others better?
As you embark your journey as future criminologists, you must remember that understanding crime, criminal law, and justice goes beyond studying laws and theories. It's about applying knowledge to create positive change in the society. Moreover, you must be able to at least share your insights with your family, friends, and loved ones to raise awareness about crime and justice issues. A simple gesture of enlightening them while you are watching news in the television, giving them sort of discussion on some terms that may have criminological relevance could help them be liberated from ignorance. Use your knowledge to pinpoint crime causes, advocate for fair treatment, and support restorative practices for both victims and offenders. As a criminology student, you are now having that responsibility to educate everyone about the causes of crime, not just immediately jumping into conclusion that because they are poor, they have the higher probability to become criminals. And lastly, to contribute to justice system that values accountability, healing, and prevention of future harm. Lastly, your rule can help strengthen public safety and improve lives. So stay committed to making a meaningful difference in your communities, thus making the lives of others better. Thank you.
Thank you, Sir Harry Achas, for sharing your insights with us today. It has been a thought-provoking discussion.
Indeed, we hope that this conversation has provided our viewers with valuable insights into how they can contribute in making our society a better place.
Until next time, stay informed,
stay ethical,
and keep making positive changes in your community. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you in the next episode of Kwentong Bayani.